Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I don't know if I need to check in. I'm just here for Tim Reed from the library.
Alright, come on. Trying to unmute this. That didn't work. What am I doing wrong here?
What are you trying to do?
Hi, Kathleen.
I was trying to get, I tried to unmute it and it, then it,
Hi,
Unmute it.
Kathleen.
Barbie, you
Right.
might want to mute your audio.
right.
I
Good
wanted
evening.
to talk.
To mute your video, your audio.
You
rather.
need to take your mask off to talk, Tom.
Alright.
I'm okay with that.
All right. Good evening, and welcome to the July 14th meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I'm Tom Ryan, and we have Jim Salvi, Courtney Fresha, and Alan Sturgis with us tonight in person. I'll start off with public input. If anybody has some public input, you can either raise your hand or, and I will try to recognize you. Linda. You're muted, Linda.
I just wanted to say thank you to all of the folks who, and there are a number of them, and I can't name them all now, but we will get recognized later. Thank you so much for helping us get that town meeting together and for Saturday. It was a lot of work by many people, and it's great to work with every one of them. So that's my point.
Oh, I appreciate all your help. Is there any other public input on anything that we don't have on our agenda? Joelle Spear?
So forgive me if I'm not doing this correctly, but I just wanted to thank Laura for all the work on Lake Boone. It's unprecedented times. Beaches are overcrowded. Gloucester's closed their beach to non-residents. So I commend you for cleaning up the trash, getting a dumpster, and having somebody staffed for parking. I go to the beach 3 or 4 times a week. It's been a wonderful change. However, I did want to bring to the attention that people are parking at the boat ramp now. There was about 30 cars this weekend. And so then there's some other comments in town. There's some concerns about the sanitary for the employee that's working there without a bathroom. That's it. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Go on to chairman's comments, and Linda ended up stealing a little of my thunder, but that's always still a good thing. You know, it appears that we pulled off town meeting this past Saturday. The weather even cooperated. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen and myself, I appreciate all the folks that came out in less than ideal circumstances to participate in the democratic process. There was a phenomenal effort made in order to pull off town meeting by quite a few people. I think it shows what kind of a team we have here working in the town of Stow. I'd like to recognize a number of them for their efforts. If I've missed anyone, which I'm sure I have, please know that your efforts were appreciated. Town Moderator Dave Walrath, the Town Clerk's Office, Linda Hathaway and Deb Scythe, the Selectman's Office, Maureen McKeon and Phoebe Habercorn, the Building Department, Craig Martin and Doug Hyde, the Fire Department with Chief Joe Landry and the entire Fire Department, Police Department, Acting Chief Salisi and the entire PD, the Board of Health, the Highway Department, Superintendent Steve Nadeau, the Neshoba Regional School District, Superintendent Brooke Clenchy, and the custodial staff of Neshoba Regional School District. Council on Aging, Allison Toole and the van drivers, the Planning Department, Susan and Valerie, the Rec Department, Laura Greenogh, and the IT Department, Ron Eld. Without everybody working all together, town meeting could not have been pulled off successfully, and they all deserve a lot of credit. So I'd like to say thank you to all of them, and I will be putting out a letter at some point thanking them all, but I just wanted to start off with that.
Here, here. Yeah.
Very impressive.
And by the way, I thank you guys too for showing up and holding down the fort outside, Ellen. There's also, I've got a reminder that there's going to be a drive-by parade for Claire Kennedy's 100th birthday. She's also going to be awarded the Post Road Cane. The start time is 2 p.m. and everybody's going to be staging on Hartley Road. So anybody who'd like more information and to be able to get down there to cheer on Claire can probably contact the COA tomorrow morning. Let's see. Next is correspondence, and I'm actually going to start off the correspondence. This past week, we ended up receiving an anonymous letter that is, I'll say, less than complimentary to us. It accuses the town of hiding in criminal intent or criminal acts with taxpayer funds. And one of the things that I don't like about anonymous letters is you can't have a conversation with them. So I'm taking the opportunity to bring this up. The letter itself reads, "Some interesting information has been reaching people about misappropriations of town funds by former treasurer and prior to her retirement. Access to computer files after her leaving, an audit of temporary accounting services with pretty much no one being made public, with none of this being made public, and considering these are town taxpayer funds, this needs to be corrected with a notification to the townspeople by the selectmen. There is a stink of corruption on all of this, and you, the town administrator, need to come clean no matter the consequences. If there's no announcement to the public after your next meeting, then media outlets will be contacted to make their own investigation. Transparency is key to all public dealings." Well, this is a reply to that by town council. With regard to the anonymous letter received by the town administrator stating that in the relevant part that the author will contact media outlets to disclose allegations contained in the letter if there is no announcement at your next public meeting, town council has advised that this letter is a public record, which it is, and it has been put in correspondence. I think it is important to note that upon notification from the town's auditors that there was a discrepancy in reconciliation of the town's accounting documents, the town administrator informed the Board of Selectmen of the same and reached out to town council. Town council thereafter contacted the Inspector General's office and disclosed the facts as known to the town. This matter is currently under investigation by the Massachusetts Office of the Inspector General. Any such discussion of this matter should only be discussed in executive session until all the facts are known and the Inspector General's investigation is complete. So, while somebody is alleging that we're not doing the right thing, I think we are doing the right thing, and we will be moving on. Is there anything else in correspondence that anybody would like to put forward for another meeting? No.
See, there wasn't much.
All right, on to the Pine Bluff Recreation Area and Beach use for summer 2020. Laura Greenogh from the Recreation Commission. Laura, are you around?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. How are you today, Laura?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, doing fine. Can you update us a little bit on what's going on and what your plans are, and how things
Sure.
might have gotten better with some of the changes that you've made and so on?
Yep, since we have initiated the resident-only policy at the beach, we've cut down the number of people using the area tremendously. From going from 50 to 60 cars there a day to 17 is pretty much the average. The trash has gone down, and I think many other residents are much happier. We have an attendant at the front gate charging a parking fee. We had to do that in order to pay for that person, and we have a porta potty on site now, a dumpster. We locked the gate at dusk, and it isn't open until the morning, so that's cutting down on the people coming into the park at night. But as somebody may have stated before, people are coming in from every direction. So we definitely need the help of the Stow police, residents, to let us know what's going on so that we can react as quick as possible. We've been working with the acting chief, Solis, now for a while. It was his recommendation that we put somebody at the gate. It was a good recommendation. It's been working out well for us. We put signage up all over the park about resident only, no lifeguards, rules of the park, and we have increased our maintenance. Our maintenance before was just me and Maureen Hogan, and we will hopefully, with the help of some more staff, be able to keep all the parks much cleaner. And Maureen's been on site this past week helping out the new staff that we have down there with people coming into the park. That's what I got.
Comments from the board? Ellen?
So Laura, have you talked to the Board of Health about the issues around, the requirements around opening the bathrooms or having porta-johns? I think that seems to be the ongoing biggest concern about, in terms of the lake. And if the beach is technically not open, but people are still using it, it seems like.
I got the first part of that.
Sorry.
But I didn't get the whole question.
So my question is around the Board of Health and whether you talk to them about the issues around the requirements around opening, either having a porta-john or opening up the bathrooms.
Yes.
I know that was an issue. It seems to be an ongoing issue with people about, the one issue now that sort of remains.
A porta potty was delivered today because we got the funding to do so. I did speak to the Board of Health about the requirements. They directed me to the guidelines, which we're going to follow to the best of our abilities. And the other thing about the Board of Health, I did meet with them last week, and they took a sample yesterday, at the town beach, and they will continue to do weekly samples throughout the remainder of through August, I believe.
So what's the difference at this point between, we don't have lifeguards, that's a big difference, but is there any other difference in terms of the beach, quote, being open or closed?
We currently don't have a permit to run the beach. That would be a difference. We don't have all of our bathrooms, we just have one porta potty right now, and we don't have lifeguards on duty, so that would be the only differences currently. We're charging a parking fee instead of a season pass because we have to limit the number of people for social distancing and to meet the guidelines.
I don't think she'll be much longer.
Jim? Jim?
Hi, Laura, it's Jim.
Hi, Jim.
So one main question, then maybe a comment. You were fortunate, thanks to your advocacy, to get some additional money at town meeting on Saturday. The main question is, do you plan to use that money to open the beach to the standards that the Board of Health wants and get a permit from them?
I just don't know if it's possible, with the virus and how this, and if we have time to hire and train and have the supervision and hire the quality of staff that we need to have down there. as you know, there's a lot of 18-plus kids that we normally have that are getting money for nothing right now from the state, and I don't know if they're gonna wanna stop doing that to, work for us. And to staff the beach with 16-year-olds, just 16-year-olds, I just think that would be just as irresponsible as, having no lifeguards there.
If I could, I think Brandon Parker's got to mute himself. Thank you. Laura, just a comment on that. At the Board of Health meeting last week, I thought you made a very good point that I may not agree with, but I understand that closing the beach entirely is probably impossible. Opening it to the Board of Health standards is, well, let's say, difficult, and that you have found the best practical solution. I just want to say that, speaking individually, I'm uncomfortable with it, and I still say that if we're going to open that beach, we should open it to public health standards. And the Board of Health has some very detailed state guidelines dealing with coronavirus. My personal opinion is that we ought to have lifeguards, and I know everybody tells me we don't have to worry about legal liability, and that's wonderful. But the first time something terrible happens, we're all going to feel just awful about that. I think we would need somebody, if we're going to have people there, we need to enforce those coronavirus standards, and we also need to, if the beach closes before the park does, we need to enforce that. We have a letter in our correspondence from a neighbor who sounds like he's been helping out a lot, who's getting a little frustrated with people coming in after the monitors leave. So although I understand your point about the practicality, and I appreciate it, I would still urge you to, now that you have the resources, to open it to the standards that the Board of Health has set. I'm personally uncomfortable with having a town beach that is open in everything but name, and it doesn't have a permit.
Courtney?
Can't think of anything to add.
Laura, one of the things one question I suppose I have is, I know you've got a porta potty down there now. What are the roadblocks to being able to open the regular bathrooms? You know, I would imagine that there are probably some fairly strict guidelines as far as being able to do that, but is that something that you're...
There's trainings, there's equipment that we need to get, and then we'd have to expect that our, either myself or Maureen or 16-year-old kids are going to go in there and clean it to the guidelines and standards that the Board of Health would require. I'd rather have a professional do it.
Okay.
And that's really the bottom line. They have the equipment, they have the manpower, and they can meet the guidelines required.
And are you looking into that, or?
We already have one on site. It came today.
Oh, I'm talking about opening the regular bathrooms that are down there.
Not currently. After this meeting, I'll meet with the rec commission. If they determine that we want to give it a try, try to get lifeguards, meet the standards. But the other thing about the guidelines is the beach is very small. And, I did the measurements as best I could, and we'd be able to fit 10 families with the 12-foot buffer. And that's trying to keep out all the people that are coming in on every other different way, and keep them social distance. And it's just, how do we would have to do time slots, and we checked with our software company, and they haven't got to that point where they can do time slots on the beach. So everywhere, every turn, there's probably could give you an answer for everything, but I will go back to the rec commission, and we will talk about it, and if we think that we can get it done, then we will. But until then, the beach will remain closed and the park will remain open.
I was talking only about the bathrooms that are down there at the beach. Not that, you know, are there particular barriers just to the bathrooms that are down there?
She said cleaning.
Yes, we'd have, like I said, I need to train the staff. There's specific trainings, for cleaning
Or
bathrooms,
bringing somebody in, correct?
or bring somebody in.
Yeah, and that's it. That's all I was asking about, is whether you were checking into finding a way to appropriately open the bathrooms within the guidelines, and, you know, so that people weren't using the woods as the bathrooms. But at least with the porta potty, that's alleviated some of that, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I had, I think what my comment was, well, I just have a comment that it sounds like there's just an awful lot to handle in order to pull this off. So there's people not using the normal entrance. It's a small space. There's challenges about staffing and training, and I'd like to say a few words of appreciation to Laura for her efforts trying to get this all to work, and keep people safe, which is, I guess, the goal, because when it's hot, it sure would be nice to take a swim. But I'm a little concerned about not being able to, I mean, I'm just concerned because I can't imagine there's any easy way to control who shows up. Because only some people are going to use the parking lot and walk in and pay their fee for the parking.
At the same time, I did go down there last Thursday, I think. I just picked an off day. And the beach checker, Drew, seemed like a very nice young man. And it sounded like 80–90% of the problems went away when he got there, because he was turning away people from out of town. So it sounded like that was a huge thing.
But he leaves at 6.
But he leaves at 6.
And the gate doesn't come down until 8.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, could I say one quick thing?
Sure.
Picking up on something that Ms. Fraser just said. Laura, I've expressed discomfort with your current solution, but I do want to say, for the past couple of weeks, you've been just taking incoming like it's World War I trench warfare, and I really appreciate all the hard work that you've put in, and with your making the effort. I did hear you say that this may be the best practical solution, so don't think I'm not listening to you. But I very, very much appreciate all the work you've put in. And my last final suggestion is maybe try to get a little bit of time with Jim Gareffi down there. Like any regulator, Laura, there's certain requirements on paper, but if you can get them to go down and look at an actual situation, 9 times out of 10, they wind up compromising them.
That's great.
Well, thanks, Jim, for your kind words. And yeah, I've been down there with Jim a few different occasions, and I have no problem doing that and seeing if there's something that we can do. I'm not shutting the door on it. I'm just saying that it's going to take a lot of things, and if I can make it happen, I definitely will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Just a moment. I'll echo that, Laura. You know, I think that the few changes that you've made at this point, you know, it's very nice to be able to have the park open and people be able to use it, and I think you've come up with a fairly decent compromise, and I'm sure you'll be working to make any other adjustments. I know that I've talked to Acting Chief Salisi, and, you know, he's much happier with it. He joined tonight, and I don't know if he's got any comments at this point. Mike?
Yeah, I've been speaking to Laura, and I can tell you that our calls for disturbances at nighttime have reduced since the neighbor has been able to assist in shutting the gate down. and that we've gotten less calls for service down there for large groups of people, and so it's definitely been working out well from our standpoint. It's as Laura said, it's the best practical solution. It wasn't, I know that some people are upset that it's not open, but it's what we could come up with for the time being, and I think she's doing a great job with that. The other thing too is I've heard that some people are having an increased parking problem around their neighborhoods. I would suggest to reach out to us, and we can help mitigate that factor as well too, to reduce those complaints, because they're not being directed at the police department, or we're not being made aware of them directly, so I don't know where to push our efforts to. That's about it.
Yep. Ellen?
Sorry, Laura, Jim asked the question, I'm not sure we got the answer. So given that you got the larger budget at town meeting, how much is that gonna go towards the beach this summer?
I estimate about 13,000 going directly towards the park, and for attendance, trash, porta potties, staff to clean the porta potties, and attendance, and then an additional $6,000 towards facility maintenance, such as mowing, trimming, weeding, all of the things that we normally do to keep the park maintained.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any member of the public that want to make a comment on this? If so, raise your hand. All right. Seeing none? Oh. Marcia.
Sorry, I was just a little late clicking on the need. I just wanted to say that the conditions under which the beach can open and what the guidelines that Laura has to work by are, like 3 pages long and extremely difficult. And I must say that if she can get someone to come and run the bathroom, do this heavy duty sanitizing, etc., that would be one really good thing. I mean, porta potties are okay, but the guidelines do say there has to be one deep cleaning every day, and it's very difficult to find someone who wants to go and clean bathrooms. And the other thing is, Laura has done her due diligence. If you can only get 10 families on the beach, then it's going to have to be, it's either going to have to be first come, first serve, or people are going to have 2 hour or whatever number of hours limits that they can be, and then they have to leave. So it's just really critical at this time that this town and anybody doesn't want to see any kind of a surge happen. And that's what I've got to say.
Thank you, Marcia. Anybody else? All right. So we will move on then. Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. So next on our agenda, we have some of the fun stuff. We have a certificate of appreciation for Tim Reed. And it would have been nice if Tim could be here in person, which is what we usually like to do for this stuff. But barring that, we'll go with this. We have a certificate that reads as follows. On this, the 14th day of July, 2020, the Stow Board of Selectmen hereby expresses its sincere appreciation to Tim Reed for 30 years of service to the town of Stow as a as a trustee of Randall Library. Over the years, Tim has served with commitment and dedication, always an eloquent representative for the important role of Randall Library in our community. He has served as chairman and treasurer, sometimes simultaneously, and spearheaded 2 efforts to obtain new space for the library. Most recently, he led a successful restoration project for the original portion of the library. He has participated in the hiring of 2 directors and 1 interim director. Looking to provide for the library's future, he has co-founded the Second Century Fund and has guided the finances, resources, staff, and physical plant of the library through years of change, recession, and challenge, always keeping in mind the best interests of the Randall Library and its place at the heart of our community. On behalf of the entire town, the Board of Selectmen wishes Tim an enjoyable retirement filled with good health, happiness, and enjoyment, and family travel.
May I say something?
Yes, you may. Mr. Salvi.
Tim, are you there? There you are. Hi, Tim. I just want to say that it's always a pleasure to honor someone who has been involved in town government for as long as Tim has. It takes a certain amount of dedication, sometimes insanity, to commit yourself consistently over such a long period of time to one thing. And there are times, I'm sure Tim would agree, when it becomes like another job. And to stick with it for that long is truly impressive. In Tim's 30-year tenure, I wasn't here 30 years ago, so I'm guessing, but I think the library has become much more of a community resource, much more interactive with members of the community, not just a place where books live and occasionally leave. It is in much better, though perhaps not completely acceptable, physical shape. That is a project that Tim has been spearheading for at least 10 years and doing some good work on. And its staff is quite reliable, and I think probably better than they were 30 years ago. I'm guessing about that. I've had a few gallons of coffee with Tim over the years, talking about library things. I've always enjoyed it. We haven't always agreed on some of the issues, but I have always enjoyed my interactions with Tim. Tim, I'm going to miss you as part of town government. I hope to see you around town. I'm sure I will. But I just want to say on a personal level, I'm going to miss you. And congratulations.
I can see him. I have him.
All right.
So I just wanted to add, Tim, that for me, working with you on the Second Century Fund, which seems like a lifetime ago, but it was over 10 years ago, maybe. That was just, to me, a rare moment where someone had the forethought to think, oh, we have money from, the Randalls from 100 years ago, but let's start another fund because we're always going to need more in the future. And I don't know if other libraries do that, but I just talk about unsung. I mean, I don't think a lot of people even remember that it's there. It's just something that always can throw off money to supplement the money that the taxpayers put into the library. You managed it incredibly well. You got people who actually knew how to manage investments, and that's a real gift to us that you had the forethought to do that. You think of the library on so many different levels. So again, I just add my thanks and appreciation for all you've done for the library and for the town.
All right, Courtney?
I can't follow those acts with the same quality, but I will thank you for shepherding the library, and my experience has been that Tim Reed is the name that I associate with the library, especially the trustees, for pretty much the whole time that I've been paying attention. And I'm just grateful for what the library is for us, and for what you've done, and for your steadfast service, and for being one of the volunteers in town, which I enjoy being myself, but I know it's pretty hard work, especially to as Jim said, to stick with something, one particular thing for a long, long time. Thank you so much.
Well, Tim, there's not much that I can say after, to follow those acts, but I've only heard good things about you, and I thank you for your service to the town.
Yeah, I appreciate all the wonderful comments and kind words. It has been a pleasure to work on the Library Board of Trustees for the last 30 years. There's been a lot of nice people, hardworking people that have been trustees that have circled through there. I have no idea how I was there for 30 years, but time does add up. There's been some fabulous people there, and it's been great to work with the people in the town. Jim is right. We have consumed large quantities of coffee together, and I also have enjoyed the conversations and the insights that he has been able to provide. Bill Wrigley has been a very accessible town manager, town administrator, and I really need to thank him for being so accessible and meeting with me many times, although when I would walk into his office, I always thought of the Rolling Stones song, "You can't always get what you want." But his experience and insight was very helpful in helping to work out solution to some of the very thorny problems the library's had over time. So I appreciate his accessibility. And the current board is a group of fabulous people, very talented, and we have a great new library director. So library is going to march through and keep progressing. I know when I started in 1990, I walked into the library, I think, for my first board meeting, and it was the shock and awe of Desert Storm was happening at that moment. That was how long ago it was. But we were circulating DVDs and books on tape, and now we have streaming services and e-books. So libraries come a long way, and I'm sure with the board of directors, board of trustees, and the new director, it'll keep progressing to provide the services to the town that make it such an excellent place to be. So thank you.
Barbara?
Yes, I'd just like to add that not many people know, in my 9 years of being with the trustees and friends, that Tim has given tremendous amounts of time on his own on weekends and to do background information and work on the simultaneously working on the budget issues, financial issues, and also he's given financially in ways that people do not know. And incredibly proud. Thank you.
Tina, were you planning on saying something?
I did. I can't thank Tim enough for all of the support he gave me when I started my job. I've been director of Randall now for 7 months, and he was always there when I had a question, always there to guide me through the budget process, there to guide me when there was a leak in the roof. I mean, he was never far away when I needed help, and he would always come and help me, and I can't thank him enough for all of the support he gave me as I started on this journey as the new library director.
Thank you. Anybody else, or? Oh, Kathleen O'Brien. I think you have to unmute, though.
I just wanted to talk about his patience. I've gone through many boards, and people have so many different ideas and disagreements even, but Tim was always patient and always able to bring everybody together. And it is a special skill that very few people can do. So I'm very proud of you. And we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion by any chance?
May I make a motion?
Sure.
I move that the selectmen approve and sign a certificate for retiring Randall Library trustee Tim Reed in the form read by the chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
There's a little rider at the bottom says you gotta come back, though.
I'm not going too far away.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for the kind words.
And I would imagine that you can probably pick this up tomorrow, or if you would prefer, we could mail it to you.
We can deliver it.
I'll stop by and pick it up if the building's opened and,
I think you call the selectman's office and Maureen can probably bring it down to you or something like that.
terrific. Thanks, Tom.
And now what I'll do is I'll kind of give you a virtual handshake,
That's right.
send it over. And I'll look forward to the day when I can shake your hand again.
Oh, thank you.
Soon I.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is a discussion and vote for a certificate for a 100-year-old resident, Claire Kennedy. And Claire is also going to be the recipient of the Post Road cane tomorrow at 2 o'clock. As I read earlier, anybody who wants information on that can contact the COA. But the certificate reads as follows. On this, the 14th day of July 2020, the Stow Board of Selectmen hereby expresses its heartfelt congratulations to Stow resident Claire Kennedy on the occasion of her 100th birthday, July 15th, 2020. As the oldest resident of Stow, Ms. Kennedy is to be honored with the Boston Post cane. Ms. Kennedy, known as Peg, moved to Stow in 1974 with her husband John and assisted him in operating the Fowler Kennedy Funeral Home in Maynard.
Oh.
As a volunteer, she delivered Meals on Wheels for 20 years into her 90s, always with a warm and friendly personality. For hobbies, she enjoyed knitting, travel, vacationing to Florida, and driving convertibles, including one nicknamed Riggy. On behalf of the entire town, the Board of Selectmen wishes Ms. Kennedy continued good health and longevity and happiness, and enjoyment of friends and family, especially her 6 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren.
She with us?
Is Ms. Kennedy with us by any chance?
Can I just note, if I'm right, if I'm not wrong, when Ms. Kennedy was born, Woodrow Wilson was president, and the big issue being debated in Washington was the League of Nations. So, congratulations to her.
Congratulations, Ms. Kennedy. Do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll move that the selectmen approve and sign a certificate for Stow's oldest resident. Stow's oldest resident, Claire Kennedy, who will be honored with the ceremonial Boston Post cane on the occasion of her 100th birthday on July 15th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. And I believe, I'm going to try to make it to the ceremony tomorrow, and I believe you are also,
Yeah.
Ellen? So we will, I'll give you a call tomorrow and we'll see if we can't coordinate it.
The COA.
Next item up is discussion and appointment for a member of the Conservation Commission, Douglas Moore.
Morse.
I'm sorry.
All right.
And I believe I have a memo here that the Conservation Commission voted unanimously at its meeting the other night to recommend to the board to appoint Doug Morse to the Conservation Commission. And Doug is a former member of the Conservation Commission and a landscape architect whose skills are quite valuable to the Commission's project reviews. So, is Mr. Morse here?
And
How are you, sir?
good, how are you?
Thank you for stepping forward. So what drives you to be, to volunteer for this?
To be honest, I actually miss being involved in some of the town events, things like this, especially related to the wetlands and open space. So,
Well,
I enjoyed my time when I was on the board and or on the commission, and say kind of miss it.
well, we appreciate you stepping forward. We need more volunteers.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, yes.
Welcome back, Doug.
Yeah, thanks.
It's Courtney.
Hi, Courtney. I know.
Hi. Nice to see you coming back. I'm a little preoccupied these days with a variety of things, but perhaps I'll see you occasionally at a meeting.
Yeah, I'm sure. That'd be nice.
It would.
How are things?
Things are great. How about you?
They're busy, but good.
Yeah, ditto. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, I'm not complaining.
Other comments from the board? No? In that case,
make a motion.
I'll take a motion.
On the recommendation of the Conservation Commission, I move to appoint Douglas Morse to the Conservation Commission to fulfill the remainder of a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? And thank you, Doug. And as a returning victim, I'm sure you know that you'll have to get sworn in, and you can probably make arrangements with Linda. But thank you again for stepping forward.
Yeah, my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Next is appointment to the Recreation Commission. William Sieller has expressed interest in serving, and he has sent in a letter of interest. Is Mr. Sieller here?
I am here, yes.
Yes, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you for stepping forward.
Happy to do it.
And my understanding is that you're fairly new to town, I believe.
Yep, my wife and 2 daughters and I have been here for about 3 years. Almost 3 years.
Well, thank you very much for getting involved.
Yeah, no problem.
And Mike, have you guys had a vote? I think you have to unmute yourself, Mike.
Yeah. Hey, is it Bill or William or Will?
It's Will.
Will.
Tom, Will has already attended two of our last meetings, so he was in the thick of our discussion, fact-finding, and thought process on what to do about all our programs for the summer due to COVID.
Mhm.
He has young children that will be involved, and both he and his wife are active in the town for being relatively new residents. So hopping into our meetings and without having a lot of time to explain things, it's been tough. It's been okay, Bill? Did you kind of understand everything we were talking about?
Yeah, I think I got it.
Okay, great. So we've been meeting on Zoom meetings, so we haven't met face to face like a lot of the new members to a lot of committees, but we are pleased to have Will join our team.
So he might be a lot taller than you think.
Yeah. Gotta be careful what I say.
Yeah.
I think I will be a lot taller than you think.
Oh, wow, really?
Well, he seems to be filling up a lot more of the screen. Mike, you just got taller. Wow.
Nice try.
All right.
I just want to say thank you, Will, for stepping up. It's nice to have relatively new residents, jump in. We really appreciate it. We need
Ditto.
more of that.
Welcome aboard,
We've
Will.
really enjoyed our time in the community so far and are really happy and thrilled to get involved.
Great.
Well, again, thank you, and
Yeah, yay, thank you for getting involved early. Like, you could be like some of these people that
30 years.
have had 30 years behind them someday.
well,
No pressure.
Don't scare.
No pressure.
well, that's it. I think I've got about 20 behind me right now,
Sure.
and I think this table has quite a bit of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
Well, I don't think none of us have beat Tim, so,
No.
but
Not I.
look forward to talking to you in another 20 years about the same things. Do I have a motion then?
Sure. On the recommendation of the Recreation Commission, let me start over. On the recommendation of the Recreation Commission, I move to appoint William, is it Sieller or Sieller? Sieller, thank you, to fulfill the remainder of a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Welcome to the club,
Thank you very much.
and I'll look forward to meeting you in person one of these days.
Yeah, look forward to it as well. Thank you.
All right.
Ditto.
Thank you. Next, it's joint boards meeting regarding Chapter 61, right of first refusal for Hallock's Point Road. The way I suppose I'm looking at this meeting is it's probably the first step towards determining whether we move forward with the process. I can't imagine that we would be waiving our first right of first refusal at this meeting, but what it is to gain or gauge interest and find out who's interested in it, and then potentially form vote to form a working group. But other than that, I think for the audience, what we have is we have right now the right of first refusal on about a 12-acre parcel down by the lake. I believe that the asking price is about $1 million. And for us to exercise our right of first refusal, because it is currently in chapter, in normal circumstances, we would have 120 days from when we received notice. Given recent legislation, we can put that off, but that we don't want to put it off any longer than absolutely necessary. So, if anybody, I suppose I'd be looking for input on from any of the people right now that might want to, or might be interested in the town buying the property. I understand that there are currently a few, the Open Space Committee has expressed interest. The Planning Board has made some comments. The Lake Boone Association has expressed interest. And I think the Conservation and Open Space has expressed some interest. And Stow Municipal Affordable Housing Trust has not expressed any interest in the property at this point. So, I think that's pretty much what I know for right now. Does the board have anything to say about this?
I'd like to hear from whoever wants to flesh out their interest, but.
Yeah.
All right. So, I will take questions. Kathy Sfera.
Thanks, Tom. Kathy Sparrow, Conservation Coordinator, and I should note that Paul Elfin is also here, who's the attorney for the Sieller. So both the Conservation Commission and the Open Space Committee have had lengthy conversations about this property. I've also had a number of conversations with Dave Sorsky from the Lake Boone Association. I think I've talked to Dan Barstow from the Lake Boone Commission, and also Bob Votere from the Stow Conservation Trust, who I believe is here tonight. And the upshot of all of those conversations is that there is serious interest in exploring the possibility of an open space acquisition of this property. I think we are not unmindful of the financial pressures that the town is facing, and also of some of the other properties that are out there that may be coming to the town at some point in the future. So I think it's fair to say that we're not looking to spend $1 million in town funds to purchase this property, but as we have done with so many other projects, to really put together a creative partnership, potentially involving SCT, some of the folks down in Lake Boone with private fundraising, even possibly the sale of a couple of lots, combined with a modest amount of town funding to have an affordable project. And at the same time, I think trying to do some creative thinking about the uses of the property. So if the town were to buy it, how exactly would it be used? Would it have trails? Would it be a picnic area? Is it more of a conservation area, more of a recreation area? I think, in order to pursue this, we really also need to have a coherent vision for the property. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. We will definitely need some more time to really pull together an actual proposal, but we just wanted to let you know that there is strong interest.
Other comments from interested parties?
David Swirsky from the Lake Boone, President, Lake Boone Association. So the Lake Boone Association is very interested in seeing this property preserved as is. Obviously, $1 million price tag is a lot, and willing to work and find out a solution to help keep this. But for the people who aren't familiar with what's going on, Hallock Point is, Lake Boone is made up of 4 basins, basically. The first basin, where the dam is, the second basin, which is, most of it's in, or half of it's in Hudson, half of it's in Stow. Then you have the third and fourth basins. So Hallock Point, actually I'm wearing my map here. So Hallock Point is right here got the second basin, the third and the fourth basin. So Hallock Point is this area right here. And Cattell property is over on the opposite side, right in this area. And between the Cattell property, which is another piece of property that's up for sale, and Hallock Point, that makes up 50%, over 50% of the shoreline in that area, in those two basins. And it is very diverse, wildlife down there, and untouched. And basically, once we lose it, it's gone. So we are definitely interested in saving it. I mean, we're putting some effort in with the Lake Boone Commission and Conservation Trust, and the Stow Concom in trying to find solutions for the algae going on, the excess nutrients going in. So any building going on in that area is going to, offset what we're trying to accomplish. And we're trying to put a lot of money and effort into finding a solution to keep this lake, a swimmable lake. So we are very interested in keeping this property as is.
Okay. Chris?
Yep, I just wanted to support what both Kathy and Dave have said. So the Lake Boone Commission, obviously we have a real stake in preserving the health of the lake and safety on the lake. And our concern is that, as Dave described, if we add a lot of development, that's one of the highest risks, and the things that studies have borne out, even specifically on this lake, that's an area that is really identified as a problem for keeping the water clean and free of invasive weeds and issues around there. And it's a small lake, and we have a lot of motorboats on it now. But it continues to be a safe lake. So an additional concern is adding, especially when we talk about both the Cattell property and this one, adding quite a few additional households. And our experience is that most households bring at least one boat with them, and are building homes with irrigation systems and waterfront greenery, etc. It is a big risk. So we are very much in support of looking for alternatives. Clearly, we as a commission don't have funds to kind of participate in buying, but we are very interested in participating in anything that, thinking about how we might be able to preserve all or at least part of that undeveloped.
And this is Dan Barstow. I'm also a member of the Lake Boone Commission. Chris is the chair, and I'll echo the words that she just said, but I'll also add that over the years, we've really seen a growing set of issues around the health of the lake. Most recently, we submitted through the town of Stow, in collaboration with Hudson, a major proposal to Massachusetts Municipal Vulnerability Program to do an integrated assessment of the health of the lake, to try to do some comprehensive action to maintain the health over the next decade and beyond. And I'd like to say, although we didn't specify it in that proposal, there's no question that the land, as Sue and Chris, as Chris has said, that land is crucial for the future health of the lake, and would be part of a comprehensive plan if we're able to acquire it.
Okay. Any other comments out there?
Yes.
Oh.
This is,
All right.
Yeah.
David, then I'll go to Mr. Wilbur.
Okay. Yeah, David Gray. I'm also with the Lake Boone Association, and I just wanted to bring up a couple of additional points that is the most remote part of the lake that is really nice for just quiet canoeing, fishing, and it's really kind of a wilderness area. It's very special. Bird watching, whatever. The other point is I am the treasurer of the Lake Boone Association, and we do have some experience with fundraising when we were trying to early efforts at dealing with the aquatic weeds. So there are some possibilities for doing some modest amount of fundraising. Thank you.
All right. If people would try to either raise their electronic hand or kind of wave to me, I'll try to remember and catch everybody as they go. But Bob?
Thank you, Tom. Well, Wilbur from the Stow Conservation Trust, 288 Red Acre Road. I just, so the trust has discussed this previously, but we really haven't taken a position on it just yet. I think Kathy summed up the Open Space Committee's discussion really well. There are a number of other possible high priority open space properties that may come before the community in the coming months or year. And so I think we will need to be somewhat creative here. That said, Lake Boone, we all know Lake Boone is a really important part of Stow. It's one of the defining elements of our town. And this is one of the last important pieces, the last unbuilt pieces on the lake. It's also not a bad value from an opportunity perspective to get that much land area for that price in today's market. And so the trust will look forward to working with all of the stakeholders involved and trying to come up with something creative, and everyone doing what we can, and see if we can make it happen here.
All right. Lori Hawks?
Oh, hi, Lori Hawks. I'm down in the third basin, so, you know, my perspective is that it would be my new neighbors over there if they were there. And, you know, I've been working on the quality of the lake for many years. I've been out of it for a bit, but, you know, I'm going to be getting back into it. But right now, I'm thinking, you know, there's so much different wildlife out here that I know wouldn't stay. You know, we've got the swans, and we have otters that came in that we've never had. And I know that once you build up over there, it would just, you know, they would just leave. And I think that for the total watershed, the water management plan that was put in place quite a while ago, there's certainly any development is going to be going against all that. But I'd like to see it stay open, and I'm encouraged by all of the people that are hoping to do that. That's about it.
Okay. Mr. Antle?
Vin Antle. You can't see my first name.
I thought it was you, Vin.
I'm the chairman of the Community Preservation Committee, and you know, I can't speak for the committee right now because we haven't discussed this project at all yet. I also wanted to reiterate kind of what Kathy said about you know, finding multiple sources of funding for this. As Bob mentions, there are some other projects waiting in the wings, perhaps, some very expensive ones, plus the town hall project is kind of looming over us. So there are competing needs there that we will be discussing. And generally, you know, our committee has liked to have the funding come from a couple different sources so that folks are showing their commitment and by kicking in some. And but this is definitely something we'll be discussing.
All right. I see it. Jesse and Lori, do you have anything you wanted to weigh in on at this time, or?
I know the planning board had written a memo. You know, we did discuss it one time. We didn't really put forth recommendations, but we were pointing out many of the things that were said already. including, Bob had mentioned this is one of the last undeveloped parcels on the lake. Certainly could be utilized to have another access point to the lake. And so I think our memo really just called out different opportunities that the town could take. And I think at that point we didn't really know how much interest there was, and so we didn't really take it beyond that, other than sort of just pointing out the characteristics and what some of those were. So other planning board members, feel free to weigh in if I didn't represent that well.
Any other comments at this point? Sure.
So, I just have a question since I'm new to this. I'm looking at the map and trying to make sure I understand it. Are there 3 existing houses out there already? Is that what those lots are? It's really hard since I haven't been able to look at the maps very carefully.
Yes.
3 houses out there already? So it's actually partially developed already?
There's a camp,
There are
right?
3 houses out there. I had a hard time hearing if there was more questions than.
Sorry. I'm sorry. There was somebody else who was talking here. There are 3 houses out there?
Correct.
Thank you.
I think they were.
Just speaking for one of the values that the Open Space Committee discussed is the buffer along Sudbury Road provides a real sense of differentiation between Sudbury and Stow. You have over a mile of basically pine forest that you go through, and maintaining that buffer along the road, I think, really gives us the sense of our town being separate from, say, Sudbury. In the same way, South Acton Road and the undeveloped land along that creates differentiation between Acton and Stow. And so I think maintaining that buffer should be part of the project.
All right. Is there? I think I just muted myself. Yeah, I think I just muted myself. Any other comments at the moment? Lori?
Tom, this is Lori Clark.
Lori?
I do have a question, and I'm sorry we missed the beginning of this. So, did you already cover sort of what is being proposed there, so what it would become? And I know, just speaking to the buffer question, the proposed development there does maintain some of the buffer. We are able to condition some of the buffer, and if somebody on the planning board or Jesse can remember how much, I don't recall the number, but we were concerned about that as well, and we went within whatever the bylaw, trying to uphold whatever our bylaw and subdivision rules and regs would allow us to do from a buffer there. That was one of our concerns.
Yeah, we haven't really gone through that. We've just wanted to see what kind of interest there was at this point. Are there any comments?
Sure.
Courtney?
So, I was still on the Conservation Commission when we were asked to permit this subdivision, this proposed subdivision. Just a few comments. The map here seems to say, Lori, that there's a 50 or 60 foot, it may not, in one place it looks like it's 50 and another 60 foot buffer near the street of no cut zone. So that would be your approach to the 100 foot that Vin was talking about. One of the things that I'm just going to make this as a comment that came up for the Conservation Commission, was that on one side of the point the side toward the boat ramp, the water is very slow moving, and so both the planning board and the Concom wanted to be sure that there wasn't the attempt to build a dock if this were developed, because of the slow moving nature. And I think that in particular would be a place where there's wildlife that loves that unusual, slower waters. And it's quite beautiful land. I walked out on it. I suspect, again, if this were developed, that the houses that were at the tip of the point would be fairly substantial, and there would be a big temptation to develop the waterfront, which is something that the Conservation Commission would prefer not to see. They prefer to have it remain undisturbed. And again, development does so much to degrade the habitat for wildlife. In our best efforts to keep things wild, they don't coexist well. So I personally would be in favor of preserving this if at all possible. And I agree that developing it would cause trouble in a very serene area, that it would be hard to keep boats out, that it would be hard to have homes in locations like this not have a dock, or we were requesting that some of these lots share a dock, which I think would be pretty tricky, and it just feels to me like it's going to cause trouble, honestly. Even though I'm in favor of reducing the number of docks, I can see the development being difficult and troublesome for our land use boards later. And and I think launching boats from this area of any size would be pretty awful, because it's such a quiet part of the lake.
Was there a limit on the number of docks in the permit?
Kathy, can you follow up on that, because I don't remember.
Was there a limit on the number of docks in the permit?
Yeah, it was 4 docks.
Yeah. So for 7 lots, 4 docks.
I have a comment, but Ellen, I'll defer to you if you've got anything. 2 quick points, Mr. Chairman. Number 1, there's been a little bit of discussion about how the 120-day deadline has been extended, and that's true by virtue of emergency legislation earlier this year. But Town Council would remind us it's dangerous to think of that as just some amorphous deadline in the future. You get lax, and I think that as a practical matter, we have a deadline here, which is the fall town meeting, which obviously has not been scheduled yet, but is most likely sometime in October, possibly November. Second point, very gratified to hear several people talk about finding other sources of funding or creative solutions, especially Vin. And I just want to reiterate what Vin said. There are a lot of competing demands on the CPA fund this year, and I personally will be very interested in any solutions that involve either recouping some of the money through sale of lots or other sources of funding. This parcel, from the materials we have, looks like it does have legitimate town benefits. It connects to the National Wildlife Refuge across the street, but there's also a lot of benefit to the neighborhood. And it would be great to see a community partnership here.
Well said.
Good points.
Thank you.
Ellen, anything? No. Paul, yes, Attorney Paul?
Mr. Chairman, you're speaking to me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate. I appreciate the comments. Please take a look at the approval. In the 3 years before the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, they did a great job protecting the land to the degree that they could, notwithstanding that there is some development proposed, including the buffer along the main road that you talked about, including limiting the number of docks in the form of a restrictive covenant, which will run with the land, and including some no-build, no-touch restrictions along the shoreline. So take a look at some of the conditions of approval, balance them against, some of the other concerns that you expressed here today, which is, of course, legitimate. Also, keep in mind that Parcel X, the parcel where the boat ramp parking is to be gifted to the town of Stow. So even if the subdivision is developed, there'll be frontage that will be gifted to the town adjacent to the other town parcel or adjacent to the boat ramp. So that's another feature. From the seller's perspective, and I represent the seller, it doesn't make any difference whether the town purchases the property or the builder-developer purchases the property. The purchase price is the same, the money's the same green color. It's fine. But I echo the comments the town council expressed, that there really is some deadlines involved in terms of being able for the town to be able to appropriate money. And so I applaud having this meeting and continuing the discussion so that you can reach a decision sooner rather than later. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Tom, this is
Oh.
Mike Kopczynski.
Yes, Mike.
Hi, everybody. Smart had looked at this parcel, and we have interest in it, but as a property that we could own ourselves, we felt it was way outside of the range of the budgetary constraints we have. I have heard that there's a possibility of there being. I think this would be very difficult property to. It's going to be. There's not going to be very popular about building anything there, and I think affordable housing would be even less popular, frankly. But the question I had, so we decided that we have interest in it, but we decided that it was not just going to be practical for us to be able to participate. If it works out, we would love to, but if the town buys it, and if there is interest in doing any housing there, we would like to get the ability to put forth an affordable proposal. One of the questions I had, though, about this parcel, just in general, in terms of discussing development as a function of lake health, is that if there is a clear deleterious effect on the health of the lake, is there any remedy short of the town spending money we don't have to buy this? Is there any remedy short of that to be able to, because of the sensitive nature of this parcel, to be able to limit the way it's developed?
Only through the permitting process. I would think only through the permitting process that it's already gone through. But I will defer to somebody who knows more than I do on that.
Yeah. Lori, would you like to weigh in on that at all, or?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Is he talking about detrimental to the lake?
No, I'm talking Lori Clark, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So what was the question?
I'll rephrase, and it's just that because of its proximity to the lake, and if there are questions about the development impact on the health of the lake, is there any remedy that can be applied short of the town purchasing the property?
I mean, the planning board has conditioned the special permit as best we could under what is allowed in terms of our bylaws. We certainly took input from other boards and Concom, but but beyond that, beyond the conditions we put in there, there's really, it's a permitted development within our bylaws, so there's I would say there's nothing in there other than what's conditioned to truly protect
the lake from a planning board zoning bylaw standpoint. I'll let the other boards speak if they have anything else to add to that.
I would think that, you know, any of the bad effects on the lake would have already been taken care of by the planning board and conservation commission. So I don't think to answer Mike's question, the ship has probably sailed. Unless some new information came up one way or another.
Right, but I think the commission and the Lakeland Association both said that there were going to be deleterious effects on the health of the lake. So I was wondering if that's true. Is there any other enforcement mechanism, or because that would be a problem whether we were putting market houses there or affordable houses, and if there's really no development that did not affect the health of the lake, then that would kind of leave any sort of housing out, particularly affordable housing, right?
So could I just,
Courtney?
My quick comment is that although our, certainly septic systems are regulated by the soil tests and setbacks from the water, modern septic systems are theoretically not going to leach into the lake the way perhaps we don't know if there are older systems around the lake that are still in any way adding nutrients to the water. Running boats, I'm not a hydrogeologist or a water specialist, but I suspect that running boats is not as clean as not running boats with motors. And we already, whatever regulation we have is what we've got, but you sort of can't sell a house on the lake and not let people have a boat. So, all that. My point is that there's not a lot, there's only so much regulation that can happen when you allow building.
I think one aspect is that the current plan is for a 7-lot subdivision, and if we were able to cobble together some kind of acquisition project, we're looking at maybe 2 lots. So going towards market rate housing. So 7 versus 2 is probably the difference in impact.
Well, don't forget 3 exists, so.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if 3 of those 7 are there already.
No, it's 3, I think. That's the other question. The other question from a housing perspective is, how does the new development affect the houses that are already there? And how would the open space piece coexist with the fact that there already is housing on this parcel? Or not the parcel in question, but the point in general.
Well, one thing I would say is when we had the public hearing for the proposed subdivision, quite frankly, there was not, and other planning board members correct me if I'm not remembering correctly, but I do not believe there was a ton of adversarial input in terms of.
Hey, congratulations!
Hey.
Thank you.
Tim, you may want to mute.
Long enough, you get to watch.
Hey, Tim Reed, you may want to mute.
That was very nice.
Can you mute him?
The selectmen can mute somebody.
I can mute him.
Yeah.
I'm still watching this.
Just go up to his box.
Parcel of land that.
There you go.
There we go.
You did it.
All right.
So Trustee, I don't know if you can remember if a butter input, but I don't recall it was very negative, to be honest.
No, I don't recall much either. The only thing there was some discussion about that existing dock
and apparently was not actually on the property of the person who owned the dock. And there was some discussion about that, and that was about it.
Right. One of the things is, I think right now I've probably heard enough, and my thought process, just speaking out loud, is to think about discussing this at meeting towards the end of August, with the intent of probably having a public hearing, which is one of the next steps, mid-September, to give all the folks that have expressed interest in this a chance to start to put together some plans and work together, with the intent of making sure that we are ready for our October/November town meeting. I don't know what the rest of the...
You might want to call on Kathy.
Kathy?
Tom, my only request to you is that we think about doing that at the first meeting in September. Reason being is two. One, I'm not going to be at the last meeting in August. And also, unless we can get them to schedule a special meeting, the CPC does not meet again until September 7th. And we'd like, I think, a chance to go and talk with them about this project. So if we could plan to come on the 8th, that would be preferable.
First meeting...
It would also give us a little more time to work on a plan with it being summer.
Right, because what I'm thinking is that I think we need a couple of weeks to schedule, if we discuss it then, that'd put it probably to the third week in September, but I think that's doable. I suppose we've got, what are the thoughts of the rest of the board?
I just wanted to say with process, if we're going into mid to late September, we're going to think about getting a warrant out if we need a town meeting. It's going to push it back quite a bit.
We could prepare a warrant article and be ready in the event that
It's just it has to get to people 2 weeks ahead at their doorstep.
Right, but what we're talking about is probably mid-October town meeting, maybe November.
You see the town clerk faint right there? Because we get 2 elections in the fall.
Yes, we've got that too.
Yeah. May I speak?
Yes, Linda.
Based on the great job that we did at this last town meeting, I would like you to really think about when you might have that town meeting and work backwards for location, because November it's going to be cold, I would imagine. And I think outside, what we're going to do and where we're going to have it and how we're going to have it is a big thought. And I would recommend that it be Saturdays. And if we run into issues with weather, I missed the time when you said the deadline would end. I know the 120 days has been extended, but how far into the future?
I believe it's...
So...
I'll let Jim speak to this. He's been...
Farther than you think. The 120-day deadline doesn't start to run until 90 days after the expiration of the governor's state of emergency. So once
the farm technically hasn't started yet.
It has not started yet. That's town council's understanding.
Okay.
So, again, as I said before, the legal deadline isn't so much the problem. It's A, thinking you have no deadline, and B, our fall town meeting. It's difficult for us to schedule a fall town meeting anytime soon, Linda, because the state hasn't wrapped up its budget, and its budget will affect Neshoba's budget.
Right.
And Neshoba's budget will affect our budget, and we have to wait for all those cards to fall into place before we can decide what we're going to be doing.
Okay. I just want you to keep in mind of
the
difficulties of pulling it together and where we would go in location. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, there's something going on November 3rd. I forget what it is.
Yeah, on September 1st. And this clerk is already kind of on the edge.
Yep.
Thank you.
So does, Vin?
A point, which is, to Kathy's point, our next scheduled CPC meeting is on the 14th of September. But I could call together one, you know, in late August. I wouldn't be a popular person, but we can do it.
Or even mid-August.
We could do we could. Once again, you know, it seems like people tend to be sticking around home this year, so we might actually be able to get a forum together.
David Gray, you have your hand up? You're on mute?
Yeah. I just was surprised that nobody mentioned archaeology for the spot there. That was way back when. For Hallock's Point, because this is an undisturbed piece of property primarily, and undoubtedly used by Native Americans, so it'd be good to keep that in the mix as we look at the value of it.
Actually, Matthew Boone met his fate in one of those low areas on either side of Hallock Point.
Right. And I think what I'd like to try to do is just figure out some of the scheduling for this point. I think all of those are good points, and they can be brought up, you know, at public hearing and so on. So, does discussing first meeting in September then sound good to everybody?
That would be September 8th.
September 8th?
Yeah.
And then what we can do is we can look at scheduling a public hearing after that. One of the things is, should we now have a vote to ask the town administrator, I believe, to form a working group so that we can start this off?
I'm opposed to working groups. I think that's just not appropriate.
Right.
If it can be a subcommittee of one of these committees that wants to take the lead on it, then I think it's still, we got to work on transparency, and I want to see it follow open meeting law.
That is what the policy passed in 2008 calls for, though. So I think we can work on the transparency issue separate from that, whether we call it a working group or a subcommittee. I think it probably does make sense to take it to the next step.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should go to the next step. I'll just vote against it, that's fine.
I can't hear Ellen.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying I didn't want to have a working group. I don't think that that's the appropriate use. I think there should be a group to work on this, but I think it should be following open meeting law. I'm concerned about transparency going forward.
But not everything gets done in a meeting that follows open meeting law. I mean, staff members hold meetings every day. How does this differ from that?
They're paid staff, and these are volunteers that
Are they
entrusted with the public good to do this work.
I'm
Why do we have open meeting law here? I don't want to we don't have to get into a larger discussion about the purpose of open meeting law. I'm going to go on record as of right now.
Okay.
Every time a working group is proposed, I'm going to oppose it.
Okay.
Because I think we need to be more transparent in this town. And working groups have just been a way to hide what groups are doing. We don't get to hear about them because they just get done on the side.
Right.
And this is a really big deal. I mean, this is a big piece of property with a really big price tag, and I think it should be
Right.
It should be a subcommittee of one of these committees that wants to take the lead on it.
And I'm saying that that's not necessarily true, that meetings happen all the time. Where that line gets drawn between a meeting that isn't subject to the open meeting law and one that is sometimes vague. But to make the broad statement that every working group violates the open meeting law is simply wrong. You have to be careful which side of that line you're on, but they do not all violate the open meeting law. And if there's a serious question about that, the easy answer is we can ask town council. But I know he's already been asked, and I think he was asked in 2008 when we created this policy.
Okay.
So,
I'm happy to continue coordinating with OBA and LBC and Open Space Committee and anybody else who's interested. That's what I do every day. If the public conversations could be at the Open Space Committee, which really I think has taken the lead here. I'm happy to do whatever makes sense.
Well, I think part of it right now, it just makes sense to start to put together the group, whatever we call it. I would say for right now, our current policy says to call it, that we ask the town administrator to put together a working group to work on this. It's going to be awkward anyway because we will be asking for that, and at our next meeting, or when we discuss this the next time, we will also have a new town administrator that will be dumping into this. So any of the coordination that you guys can do ahead is probably good. Lori, did you have a comment?
Just out of curiosity, what is the problem with the subcommittee?
Right now, our policy calls for this. We can always discuss it sometime in the future.
So I have a procedural question. Is there a way that we can form a working group that behaves like a subcommittee?
I have no idea.
You can form a subcommittee, and
So is the difference that we make them town employees?
no, that doesn't make a difference.
So-
One is subject to the open meeting law and one isn't. And the policy currently calls for a working group. I think the appropriate thing to do would be, when we have a new town administrator who has expressed interest in revamping some of our policies, to take this question up with her. We could make it a subcommittee, but then it is governed by the open meeting law, which obviously compounds scheduling difficulties and just makes getting together more difficult. It doesn't matter, the same work gets done, but it makes it more difficult. And you just have to ask yourself, is the work that's getting done the sort of thing that is detail staff kind of work, and it will be later discussed in public, so the policy reason to have it governed by the open meeting law is less, or are those discussions so important that they themselves should be part of the open meeting law? I assume that this was discussed and answered in 2008. I wasn't on the board, Ellen, you were, so I don't know, but
As far as it wasn't on when I was on the board, I don't recall. Because it came in late. I thought it came in late. Linda would know what a...
maybe, but I hear what you're saying, but let's just form a working group and maybe leave the decision about whether to start having them.
We can change it
adhere to
later on, but
later on.
at least what we can do is start getting people together. Kathy, did you have a...
If I might, I did help write the policy, and as a practical matter, we're talking about 5 weeks' time to put together a plan. If you want to appoint a subcommittee, you're going to have to write a charter for the subcommittee. The members are going to have to be appointed. They're going to have to be sworn in. We need to meet next week about this. So I'm not wanting to hide anything. All these discussions will happen either at Open Space Committee or back here at the Selectmen. We're really putting together a plan more than anything.
Bill, did you have a comment? It looked like you
I
were...
just wanted to ask if the study group you're speaking of is part of the policy that was set up by the Land Use Study Committee back a few years ago when they set up a procedure for properties that came up this way.
And that's my understanding, is that setting up a town administrator's working group is part of the policy.
Thank you.
So in this case, the distinction is that the working group can be more agile than a subcommittee simply because of the way they work. They can meet without having to
I think that's part of it.
post a meeting and so forth. And so
They can
for-
start talking about it tomorrow.
For normal circumstances, when we don't have a pandemic changing our deadlines, we need to be particularly agile for a Chapter 61 response, and that's why that would have been chosen. So I'm in favor of also of forming a working group this time, with due respect to Ellen's objection, and I would also like to just perhaps revisit the policy in the future and see if there's a way that we can make it more flexible.
I agree with that.
All right, so do I have a motion to form a working group, and we will revisit this? Well, I believe it's to ask the town administrator to form a working group for this, and then what we'll do is we'll plan on having our next meeting to discuss this on September 8th.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board instruct the town administrator to convene a working group regarding the possible purchase under Chapter 61B of the land at Hallock's Point.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? All right, so that carries. So at least we have a way forward. Thank you all for coming for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All that input.
Liaison reports. Does anybody have anything to talk about at this point?
I'm not officially a liaison, but I did go to the Board of Health meeting and did Jim, and I just wanted to say, I was totally wowed. The current chair, whose name, of course, I did not write down.
Mary McDowell.
Mary, yeah, amazing woman.
She is.
Ran a really good meeting. I mean, there was a lot to go through. She had a lot of hearings, as well as we were going to get to the lake stuff, and I was just really impressed. I mean, just like the planning board, who has to know stuff like well beyond what volunteers are, I hadn't really thought. I mean, Marcia Rising is, to me, Board of Health, sort of like Tim Reed is the library, and just to hear the three of them, how much they know, and then they had actually a training as part of the meeting. I just want to express appreciation once again for amazing volunteers, and they're carrying on a lot of things right now. So that's all. I don't think there was anything beyond the lake that we talked about. I think they talked about the testing. That was actually I was glad to hear that they're going to continue that through the summer.
I would actually really repeat that. That's the second or third time I've seen Mary in action. Merrily is also very good, and Marcia, of course, is a stalwart. But I was actually going to say, when we do liaison assignments, if you want to give that one up, I was going to offer, but it sounds like Ellen might be interested too. So, but they're a board that we don't deal with very often. But when we do, it's it's a crisis. I had two things. Something that Tim mentioned reminded me that we've gotten away from having the library director come into our meetings periodically and update us on library activities. I always thought that was important, because there was a feeling on this board years ago, I don't think it's here anymore, that the library is just for kids, they don't really do that much for the community. If we had to go to Acton for our books, our library services, we could do that. I've always found, I found their 6-month updates, which we may not even have done since you've been on the board.
Could be tough.
I always found them very eye-opening, and Tina seems like she'd be very good at it. The last thing I wanted to mention, David Gavin is a selectman in Maynard, and I contacted him just to say congratulations when he got re-elected recently. I've met him over the years. He's been a selectman for forever. And we started talking. He proposed a liaison group of 1 or 2 selectmen between the two towns, just to discuss issues that are common to the two towns. He wanted to raise with the Maynard selectmen first. He did. They're interested. They suggested 2 selectmen from each town. For some reason, he thinks it should just be selectmen, not staff. I have not. I was going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be part of it, but I was going to suggest Megan might be interested. Maybe I have not had a chance to discuss this with her, so I feel a little awkward. But if
that's what she gets for missing a meeting.
Right. So
you're going to volunteer for something.
If it's all right with everybody else, maybe. First of all, are we interested in even doing this? I don't see much of a downside. And Megan, from her planning background, I think would be interested in doing it. maybe should give her a right of first refusal, for lack of a better word.
Could we put it on the list of liaison opportunities and haggle over who gets it?
That sounds, and she'll be here then, so that sounds fine.
One of the things, if you send me a quick note, what I'll do is I'll ask for it to be put on to the agenda for 7:28, when we were going to discuss liaison assignments anyway.
Okay.
And maybe we do that then. But if you don't, I'll forget about it.
Okay.
Courtney?
The one thing I have, I think I didn't report to this board yet, the Community Preservation Committee got a plan of the trajectory of the project on Pine Point and Sudbury Road recently. So they're planning their construction schedule, which I find really exciting, because we have an affordable housing project going forward in Stow.
It is exciting.
Good deal.
On a small scale, you know, for
You gotta start somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good.
Anybody?
But just another conversation we had, I had with the town clerk and assistant town clerk about somehow having a little bit of a debrief, given this was a sort of an extraordinary town meeting, and at one point I was gonna be suggesting we have it during the Selectmen meeting. I think Linda thought maybe it would be better to have some collection of thoughts. I don't know, has she talked to you about this? Just to get sort of people's reactions, and we were even talking about doing a town survey for people who came or didn't come, and did they not come because of COVID, or did they not come because it was a Saturday, or because it was July, and just trying to get some more information, since we know we're gonna have at least one more COVID town meeting, and it's just, I guess I'm just putting that on the general radar. I don't know.
What that did is that actually reminded me, I got just a quick email that Dave Walrath wanted me to, sometime in the not too distant future, put on the agenda, or at least send out information to everybody, to start thinking about the fall town meeting and how we're going to do it, what the different options are going to be. So that would probably be a good thing to do the two of them together. Dave had probably a full-page, single-spaced thing of questions, ideas, et cetera, and I actually, I agree that a debrief on what we did, what worked, what didn't. I think you guys outside probably heard better than I did up on the stage.
Yeah.
Little thing. There are probably 1,000 little things, but we pulled it off. So it's a good point.
Is there any hope the guidelines will change between now and then? I know we're not going to have a vaccine, but...
Well, it all depends on...
It'd be size of gathering.
I mean, it's going to be hard, somebody said this earlier, it's going to be hard to have the same kind of town meeting in November.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
we need to think about it now,
Right.
in terms of that space issue that Linda was saying.
Right.
Yep.
Is it possible to rent the space, to rent whatever they use to conduct town meeting in Maynard over the radio? So it would be using the broadcasting system from the high school, and using that parking lot so that you could have a lot of cars there.
And that's actually some of the stuff that David had proposed. I guess he's already checked into WAVM.
Great.
That's definitely doable. It could potentially even be done, as far away as Bolton if we needed to, using that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I think legwork that he probably did coming up to this town meeting to try to make it work.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, town meetings outside of the town are legal during this emergency. So we could actually just use the Mill and Main parking lot like Maynard did.
Right. If that's what we wanted to do.
Right.
David was suggesting, I think he's talked to Bose, they were amenable to using that. We could potentially use the high school in Bolton. we could potentially use, the mill in Maynard. It's all gonna depend on,
You want to use that radio station? My experience is that you may, I don't know if you can get it over in Bolton.
and that's it, I
Yeah,
think.
you can't, I mean, Maynard doesn't go much
No,
out of
their signal is kind of.
Well, David said that they technically have a 20-mile range.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
That's probably on paper.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But this is all stuff that he mentioned to bring up, so I was planning on bringing that up, and I'll put down that, we should probably do a debrief about the same time.
Yeah.
And that, I've got a couple things here that, one of them is, just so you guys know, Acting Chief Salisi is gonna come to our next meeting to discuss the 8 can't wait issues for social justice and so that are being asked for. He's going to be proposing a policy change within the police department that we would have to approve. You may see it he's going to be having a conversation the next couple days with the newspaper, but he's going to be bringing the policy to us to discuss before he tells them what it is. Also on the 28th, I think I'd already mentioned that I was planning on doing an executive session to bring everybody up to speed on all of the little issues that we might have, and even remind some of us that may have forgotten things. I figure it'd be a good way for Bill to put together a good list to transfer to the new town administrator. And then one other thing that we can probably decide on the 28th, but I wanted people to start potentially thinking about it now, is whether we actually want to have or skip a meeting in August. The first meeting in August, it's August 11th, and depending on what I'm seeing coming up for agenda items, whether we try to stuff a little bit more into the 28th meeting, or whether, or whether we do actually have a meeting on August 11th. So if you've got any thoughts about whether you'd rather put a little bit more into the 28th, if we think if things are looking light then, or whether you definitely want to have a meeting on the 11th at this point. So, I know it's kind of springing it on you, but it's...
Well, Kathy and I are going away the last week in August. So would you consider doing the reverse, having the 11th meeting and skipping the 28th? Is it 6 of one, half a dozen of another to everybody else?
Well, the only other thing is the 28th is going to be Bill's last meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's important to have that meeting. Okay.
Yeah, I had kind of thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Do your plans accommodate that, or will you be?
I'm going to be in Maine. I
Guess
might
not.
be able to zoom in.
Yeah.
But is there any strong opinion whether we should definitely have a meeting on the 11th, or try to put a little bit more into the 28th instead? Or
I don't have a strong opinion. I never wind up going very far. Well, no, not quite never, but lately.
Yeah, I mean, I guess since I'm still sort of not a full, what the flow looks like, all I can think of right now is that if there's other things with Bill around, like having more discussion about whatever.
right. I know one of the things is that Bill is looking to take time off because I guess he's got about 10,000 hours of vacation time saved up over the years, and he'd like to use some of it before he goes to a part-time basis.
Yeah.
So that we're not writing him just a huge check. So that's one of it, and I think Maureen has some plans that she might like to try to get done. You said you had some, you've got to move kids to school and things?
Yeah, later in August, yeah.
Well, that's, so here's maybe a thought. I don't know what Bill's plans are. I don't want to make his
Mhm.
vacation plans for him, but if he wanted to finish, not the last week of August, like, be on vacation for the last 2 weeks or something.
Mhm.
I mean, if he's already planning to take, because kids are usually right later in August in terms of moving. Maybe when we have the 11th meeting, that would get all of us here, and then Bill, so we're not missing Bill's last day. I mean, I think it would be
Right.
particularly sad if Jim wasn't here for Bill's sort of last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I would work around it, and I would do something on the 11th, but,
Well, let me ask another silly question, is what if we kind of split the difference, and we were going to have one the 11th and one the 28th? What if we did the one on the 15th, or what,
Tuesday's
18th?
the 18th.
18th, something like that. We just have one in the middle of the month, and then that would technically be Bill's last one. Would that
So
work
that
out
would-
for your schedule, Maureen,
I
or?
don't think so. I was planning on being here the 28th of August,
Uh-huh.
getting all that done earlier, but whatever works for you guys.
so just to be clear, when we're saying the 28th of August, we really mean the 25th of August.
25th, sorry.
That's okay. It's the 28th of July. Okay.
I don't think we need to.
Well, could,
I'm happy to be flexible. That's my answer, is that whatever works for everybody else's stuff, because I do the same things on my,
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up so I wasn't springing
Right.
it on you guys. I don't think we have to make the decision until the 28th. And, but I wanted to get everybody thinking about it a little bit. And if it looks like it's gonna be light, and if we can schedule it so we're doing Bill's last meeting while you're still here, that'd be great. And then if we can, if we don't have the second meeting, if we have one right in the middle of August instead of 2 weeks in and one, towards the end, that might work out also.
so, I like the idea of meeting on the 18th.
I won't be there.
You will be here.
I can call in, but I won't be here. Because I thought that was an off week, so I made plans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well, and that's why I'm bringing it up now, that, all right, so, you know what, why don't, if people have already made plans for certain things, like Jim?
We didn't have any choice. That was the only week available, and now I'm regretting it, but.
All right, Jim, gone, the week of what?
I'll say goodbye on my own. That's
Right.
fine.
Well, part of it too is I want to make sure that if I do, when I schedule some of these meetings, I'd like to try to get as many people as I can here so that, we've got a full board making the decisions whenever we can. So if we ended up with something that was important that was going to be in that area, I'd just as soon move the date. But you're gone the week of
24th to 28th.
24 to 28. And Ellen, you're,
It's just, that week I made plans to visit with a friend on the Cape.
It's your way the 18th.
I mean, I'm basically coming and going all of August, but that week particularly I've got already planned.
all right, so week of 8/18, you're
Yeah.
not around, all right. Well, like I say, we can discuss all that stuff on the 28th. I'll probably be inclined to try to, if we had to go a little longer at a meeting, so that we could try to skip one.
All right.
But, and then,
Fine with that? Especially with
Those
fair
meetings
warning.
are good.
that's what I figured.
Yeah.
That sounds like Charles.
Well, I was gonna make one comment, which is that I look forward to the meetings right now as an opportunity to build the new team.
Yeah.
And so, In that regard, more meetings are good, but less meetings are generally good. So,
All right. Is there anything, oh, what I was gonna say is, if you do know you're gonna be on vacation or something like that ahead of time, if you can just let Maureen know, so that when we're talking about it, we can, try to make sure we've got things covered best we can. I'm not inclined to generally move meetings, but, I know I'll probably end up gone one meeting or another, but,
Oh, no, you can't.
yeah.
Didn't
That's right.
Jim tell you? You can't miss.
no, it'd be Courtney that's telling him that, because Courtney would be chairing if he's not.
Oh, there you go.
I'll give you fair warning, Courtney.
Thanks.
I took meetings off when I was chair. It's a great time for the clerk to show what they got.
That's
so,
right.
yeah.
Actually, I never want, you didn't force me
you
to chair.
did, not during that year. Ingeborg did. Ingeborg had to cover a couple of them.
She's
Didn't I tell you that come January, I'm going to Florida for the winter?
Great.
Used to be, there was
Yeah.
an absentee.
Jack.
selectman, right? That's right. He was 4 or 5 months in Florida, right?
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Anything else?
I'll give you a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. All right.
Thank you.
Let's see. This